Hey, I am Jess, and I'm obsessed with all things nutrition, science, and helping you navigate this information while maintaining a deep sense of peace and empowerment in your body. I'm a registered dietitian who started out with an eating disorder and then fell in love with learning about how God intricately designed our bodies to be resilient and so much more than superficially beautiful. I am now a mama who loves to be healthy, not because of how it makes me look, but because of how it has transformed the energy I can give to my family, my friends, and you. On this show, we hit on real talk around the latest nutrition science and body image resiliency, all while balancing it between grit and grace. Think of this as your weekly audio coffee to encourage your empowered eating journey. This is the Fuel Her Awesome podcast. Hey friend, I am so glad you're here today because we are talking straight nutrition. You guys know this, and if you don't, let me break the news to you. I love talking about nutrition, and I love talking about it because I know it has the potential to absolutely transform lives. We all have to eat, we all need nutrition, and so understanding how to modify it and take it in according to what we need is life-giving, and that's why I love talking about it. So I'm really glad you're here today. We are talking about a really fun topic, and that is nutrition to combat aging. And I just want to start by saying we're not going to call it anti-aging. I know that's in the title, but really that's because that's a keyword, and my coach always tells me to use keywords in podcast titles because it gets y'all's attention. But we're going to flip it, because I don't like the term anti-aging. I'm not in my anti-aging era. Although I'm getting older and I'm about to turn 40, and there's a lot of nutrition and metabolic changes that are happening. I don't like the idea of anti-aging because I want to age. But what I want to do is age gracefully. So for the purpose of this podcast, we are going to call it age-enhancing nutrition. How we can make the most of the next year, the next season, the next chapter of our life with nutrition. And I'm so here for this because I know I feel it. I know if you're here today, you probably feel this too, but things change. Things change when we go through puberty. Things change when we have kids. Things change in midlife. And guess what? The research tells us this, but the good news is that there is a lot we can do to actually combat some of the negative side effects and age really, really well. When I think of aging well, I think of my grandpa Sam. He is a legend in my book. In fact, he is who my Airstream is named after. My Airstream is named Sammy after Grandpa Sam. My nephew's name is Sam after, I always tease my sister. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you named my nephew after my Airstream. And she's like, definitely not, Jess. I just like to give her a hard time. My grandpa Sam aged really, really well. He lived to his mid-80s, and he lived well into that. He was biking up until he passed away. He was active. He was at the library. He really had his health and his dignity all the way up until he moved on to the other side of heaven. And that's how I want to live and how I want to live my life. Now, I remember when I was going through grad school or undergrad and getting my degree in nutrition, my grandpa went to the doctors, and he was not in good shape. He was not healthy at that time. And the doctor looked at him and said, Sam, you're unhealthy. You need to quit smoking, start exercising, and stop drinking beer. And my grandpa looked at him being stubborn and said, all right, doc, I will stop smoking and I will start exercising, but I'm not giving up my beer. And so as we talk about some of the nutrition topics today, I'm going to give you like the overall rundown of how we can use nutrition to age enhance our life as we grow older. But I want you to think of like, what can I actually do? What feels like something that's feasible? And what are the non-negotiables that I'm just not willing to give up? Because here's the thing. My grandpa did 2 out of the 3 things his doctor recommended. And he lived well. He lived with health and vitality that I can only hope and pray to have. And he didn't do all of them. So I think that goes a long way. And just keeping this podcast in true empowered eating stance, we are going to lay out all of the nutrition science and the information, but I want you to overlap that with your values so you can know, okay, this one fits, but Jess, this piece is maybe not something I'm going to tackle right now, maybe not ever, but it's just not something that fits into my value system right now at this moment. Because at the end of this podcast, you should feel empowered and excited to make some of these changes, not overwhelmed. And if you feel overwhelmed, it's because you're trying to do all of them, sister. And hey, some is better than none. So we're just going to lay that out there right now. So in the 1960s, the average age expectancy was only 69 years old. I don't like that number. My parents are getting close to that number. So we do not accept that. And the good news is now the current life expectancy has actually extended to 79 or 80 years old. And we have found that nutrition, adding in some of these targeted nutrition strategies, can actually add an extra 6 to 8 years to your life expectancy. That's amazing. Sign me up. How do we get there, Jess? So we're going to walk through some of these step-by-step tips. But before we get there, we have to understand how our body changes in our 40s and in our 60s, because there are some distinct metabolic shifts, metabolic and hormonal shifts that happen in those decades that impact what sort of nutrition we need and how we can care for our bodies. So we need to get curious here. And, whenever I think about getting curious, it reminds me of when I was in third grade and this girl started making fun of me and she said, "Hey, Jess, act your age, not your shoe size." And I was so devastated. I was very sensitive. I'm still sensitive, but I was more sensitive on the outside at that time in my life. I came home, I cried to my mom and said, "Mom, she told me to act my age, not my shoe size," which at the time my shoe size was like a 4, maybe a 3. I had tiny feet. And I was, 10, 8 or 9. How old are you in third grade? 9 years old. 8. No, because I was young. I was 8 years old. So I'm going, "Mom, she told me to act 3 and I'm 8. This is not cool." And now I just love that insult because I'm like, I want to act my shoe size, not my age. And if I look at my shoe size, which is an 8 or a 9, I remember what it was like to be 8 or 9 years old, and I was really curious. And so when it comes to food, I want y'all to act your shoe size, not your age, and let's get really curious about how things shift instead of feeling victim to aging. And I think that's probably why I don't like the word anti-aging, because this anti-aging rhetoric or this narrative that aging is terrible, like just you wait until you get here. Guys, we all know it. It gets different, but we have more wisdom as we get older that we didn't have when we were younger. I look at some of the people who are 20 years older than me, and I look at the amount of wisdom they carry, and that's something I cannot wait to have. We just need to pair some of the physical changes with that wisdom so that we can age gracefully. So some of the stuff that happens is pretty apparent in our 40s and our 60s. A recent study showed that there's a big shift in metabolism in our 40s, specifically to how we metabolize lipids or fats. This study also found that there is a big shift in our 60s with how we metabolize carbohydrates. And this shift was even more dramatic for women because we go through menopause during that season. So these metabolic changes, what it indicates is that we don't necessarily burn less calories and we don't have a slower metabolism. Rather, our body changes how we break down food. So we're breaking it down differently than we did when we were younger. And we know this to be true about protein. I've talked a lot about protein on the podcast, but that is one of the biggest shifts or the earliest shifts when it comes to how we metabolically break down food. When you are in your teens, you can have a tiny Chomp's beef stick that has 6 grams of protein, and that's going to just bam, trigger your muscle repair process. You're growing muscle off that tiny Chomp beef stick. Now, when we get into our 40s and beyond, we need more protein and specific types of protein to turn on that muscle repair process because we process it differently. And so what this study revealed is that, we knew this to be true about protein, but now we see this with lipids or fats in our 40s, and we see it again with carbohydrates in our 50s, late 50s and 60s. Understanding this and getting curious, this is where we can kind of tune into our biofeedback. When we start to learn about this, we can learn how to adapt and adjust our food intake so that we age well. And again, act your shoe size, not your age, because if you get stuck in this, well, I didn't used to have to do this, it didn't used to be this way, you'll get caught in the victim mentality. You will get stuck in this position feeling like you can't do anything, and that's just not true. I want you to remember that while you may need to shift how much protein, carbs, and fats we eat as we age, aging comes with so many other wonderful things as well, like usually more resources because you've had a job for a while, you have more friends, you have good friends, right? You've done the work and weeded out the ones that, need to move on. Thank you, next. We're in healthier relationships. There is so much goodness that comes with aging, and I don't want you to continue this narrative in your head that the physical piece has to be bad. We just have to adapt and adjust. Okay, I'm going to say that throughout the whole podcast because I hear it a lot, and I just don't want to be that, I want to age really well. And my goal is that no matter where I am, no matter what age I am, I want a woman 10, 15 years younger than me to look up to me and go, hey, that looks fun. I think being her age actually looks like a good time, and I can't wait to get there. And I know some of you are my age, so I share that because I think it'd be awesome if y'all jumped on this bandwagon. I don't do it perfectly, believe me. I have my days, but I do my best. And I have some really amazing women who are 10 to 20 years ahead of me that do this really well. And I look up to them and I want to be just like them. My grandpa, he was another one. He showed me that it can be done. And so this whole podcast is about how we do that. I promise we're going to get into the nutrition. There's just there's so much narrative that we have to rewrite before we can even implement the nutrition. So I digress. Okay, let's talk about what we can actually do from the nutrition standpoint to start having some of these age-enhancing effects from nutrition. Now, the first one I already hit on. This one happens first and earliest, and that is a change in our muscle mass retention and ability to build muscle mass. There is an increased risk of muscle loss and deterioration, especially as we move into our 40s. The average number is that we lose about 1% of our muscle mass each year that we don't work to maintain it. And how we work to maintain it is two things: increase your protein and increase your weightlifting. Weightlifting's all the rage these days, and if you were like me a few years ago, I would sooner die than go lift weights. I just hated it. It was not something that I enjoyed, but if I'm honest with you, I didn't enjoy it because I didn't know how to do it. I had been a runner and a cardio girl my whole life, so the idea of lifting weights just reminded me of the meatheads in the gym in high school and college that I didn't like and I didn't want to be around. And I will say learning about weightlifting and learning how to do it, how to track it, how to grow with it was really, really empowering. And so if that's something you're interested in, I really encourage you, get connected with a trainer. I have an awesome one, Emily Nichols, who just launched an app. I will be happy to share that in the show notes, but just learning about how we can add some of this in our lives goes a really long way. And I'll tell you, one of the best places it shows up is in your activities of daily living, in how you move around. I'll never forget the day I went to Costco and I could lift that 40-pound bag of dog food by myself. I didn't have to ask my husband. I didn't have to ask some stranger walking by. Like, I could do it myself, and I'm so proud of that. And that's something I want to keep and maintain for as long as possible. So weightlifting is a piece of that puzzle. But the other piece is nutrition, increasing our protein. And it's not just increasing it overall, it's increasing the doses that we have and the type of protein. There is a specific amino acid called leucine. This I think of as like the key that unlocks the protein and the muscle synthesis door. And then the quantity of protein is it's like the workers that flood in through that door and get the job done. So we need both of these. So some foods that are high in leucine are going to be animal meats, cashews, pine nuts, eggs, and specifically whey protein. Whey protein in supplement form is an incredible resource, especially for any of those women who are super busy and on the go. I'm a big fan of this. Now, if you're someone that's like, I am lactose intolerant or I'm skeptical about whey, I understand. I actually just did an episode a couple weeks ago with owner of Polar Joe, and he talked about the different types of whey protein, what we need to look for when we're looking for a high quality whey protein. It was awesome. So if you want to dive in deeper on whey protein, check out that episode. Okay, let's dive into the next one. Cognitive, I don't even like this word. It's cognitive decline, but I don't like that. Cognitive changes. There are distinct changes that happen in the brain starting at age 40. I believe a lot of that has to do with shifts in sleep, but then progress as we move into our 50s and menopause or perimenopause starts to set in, and then 60s where we undergo various changes that are part of the natural process. And here's the thing. And when I'm talking about these aging processes, I don't want you to, I really want to get the narrative that they're bad out of your head. Like the way I think of it is if I look at my forehead, I have forehead lines. Now, culture is like, ew, gross, get some Botox. But when I actually break it down, like having forehead lines is not bad. There's nothing wrong with my forehead. It's just what happens over time because I've now have some collagen loss in my skin, and I've raised my eyebrows so many times that the skin has loosened up and become a little bit weaker. Now, there are things I can do to combat that, but I really want to get the idea out of my head that forehead lines are bad. Forehead lines are the natural byproduct of growing and aging. And so when we talk about some of these brain changes, again, they're not bad. They're the natural changes. My job here today is to tell you what you can do to move through them so that they're not so detrimental or they don't impact our life. So some of the brain changes that happen is that we have a slower communication between brain cells. So neurons and nerve cells, they don't communicate as quickly, which can affect the processing and the speed times and reactions in which we respond to things. I kind of think of this as like a computer that's been around the block for a while. If it doesn't get an upgrade, it just operates a little bit slower. So what can we do about this? We just need some lotion for our brain. We need something in there that smooths out those neural connections and helps things flow a little smoother, and that is omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3s are from salmon, walnuts, and flaxseed, and they really help support cell membrane health and improve communication between the neurons. This is a micronutrient that it's hard to get a lot of from the diet. Like unless you're eating salmon twice a week, walnuts every other day, and flaxseed on a regular basis, I mean, you could do that. That would be amazing. I know this fact, and I don't do this. So I've chosen to supplement with omega-3s. And then the weeks I do have salmon, I back off my omega-3 supplements because I'm getting it from food, obviously. But this is one that we know higher doses help the brain stay more fluid and combat some of that slower communication between brain cells. Another thing that happens is that there's a decline in brain volume as we go up on the age chart. This happens specifically in the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, which are responsible for memory and decision making. This tends to shrink over time with age. And y'all can probably relate to this. I mean, how many times do you see that person? You're like, I know that person. There's like half a brain connection, but then it doesn't connect to the actual name. Or you know what I'm doing this with? There's a new song out by Brandon Lake. See, I just did it. Brandon Lake is an artist he's been around for a while, but he's newer in my music playlist. And his name to me, it sounds a lot like Jeremy Camp, who was another worship singer several years ago. Get it? Like Jeremy Camp, Brandon Lake, Camp Lake. I don't know. They cross paths in my brain. So every time I'm talking about Brandon Lake's new song, it takes me a minute. Like I can see his name, but it takes a minute for that like connection to happen and me not to say Jeremy Camp. That's what happens when we age, where we lose that ability to store those memories and access them really quickly. So one of the things we can do, or one of the reasons this happens, is because of inflammation within the brain. So the best thing we can do is prioritize antioxidants like vitamin C and vitamin E. These are found in berries, citrus fruits, and almonds. If we can prioritize these antioxidants, we can protect our brain against some of the oxidative stress and this slow brain volume loss that naturally happens over time. This is going to be my test to myself as I continue taking my supplements, is like, how quickly can I start to access the name Brandon Lake over Jeremy Camp? They're both amazing singers, by the way. Okay, so moving right along, let's keep talking about the brain because this is one of the biggest things that changes. We also see a decrease in neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is the ability for your brain to learn new skills or recover from injury. I think of neuroplasticity as like the body's ability or the brain's ability to pave a new road, and this changes. I mean, this is why we get stuck on our ways as we age. And again, like when I look at the people who are 20 years ahead of me and who have aged well, one of the things they've done really well is that they are forever students. They are always learning new skills. They are challenging who they are and looking for ways to learn more, do more, and be better. So I want to do that. Here's how nutrition can help us do that. incorporating choline-rich foods like eggs or soybeans can actually help us enhance our neuroplasticity and our memory function. Eggs specifically have choline in the egg yolk, and I know there's been a lot of tug of war with eggs, like are they healthy, unhealthy? The general census now is that they are very healthy, especially the whole egg, especially when we're getting these eggs from happy chickens. We know that happy chickens lay eggs with higher choline amounts. Isn't that cool? So you can know you're getting a happy chicken egg if you're buying a free-range organic egg, or better yet, if you have chickens in your backyard. I don't have chickens in my backyard anymore. I'm really sad about that. The Chronicles of the Brown Chickens is a story for another time. There was a lot of trauma that we experienced. Okay, so let's keep going. Otherwise, I'm going to finish this podcast talking about chickens. Something else that happens in our brain as we are blessed to continue along the age spectrum is that we have a decreased blood flow to our brain, and this can lead to less oxygen and therefore less nutrients for optimal function. So I think of it like we just water our garden less frequently, and in order for the plants to survive, we have to go a little bit farther because we don't water as often. We don't give our brain as much oxygen and as much fluid. So eating nitrate-rich foods, and I'm talking about the nitrates in natural food products, so not in like processed meats, but in things like leafy greens and beets, this can promote better blood flow and brain oxygenation. Guys, if you're noticing a pattern here, like a lot of this, the secret to keeping your brain healthy is eating whole natural foods. Like how amazing is that? I always go, you guys know, I love me, my Jesus. And I look at the way God designed food. It just astounds me. Like when it comes to health, he really gave us the tools. Like God really gave us the tools in food for longevity. We just have to eat them in their whole and natural form. So yes, whole natural foods are incredible for the body, specifically for the brain. But I also mentioned supplements, and adding supplements to a base healthy diet can be instrumental in maintaining longevity and aging well. And one of the best things that's come on the market in the last 10, 15 years is the option to take adaptogens. Guys, adaptogens are absolutely incredible and can really help us withstand some of the inflammation that's associated with stress. The most common and most beneficial ones that I've researched thus far are ashwagandha and lion's mane. Both of these are associated with a decrease in inflammation and an increase in brain function. And one of my favorite companies is called Magic Mind. They have these like little delicious shots of this, and you can just take it like with your coffee. It tastes good, it's quick, and I will tell you, I feel so different when I have these. And they also have other things like turmeric in them, which can be anti-inflammatory and even anti-cancerous. So adding this to your regimen can be absolutely incredible when it comes to age-enhancing nutrition strategies. So if y'all are interested in Magic Mind, I'm going to go ahead and link that in the show notes as well. Okay, I could go on about the brain. I mean, people write entire books on how to preserve brain function over time, but these are some of the basics that we can do. So just to recap, we've hit on protein. We've hit on how to preserve cognitive function, and we can do that with giving ourselves adequate omega-3, prioritizing antioxidants like vitamin C, vitamin E, and then consuming choline-rich foods and nitrate-rich foods. And those would be things like whole eggs and then leafy greens and beets, respectively. Okay, real quickly, I want to hit on a couple more things that happen as we age and what we can do about them. And remember, as I'm going through these, try not to think of it like I have to do all of them, but just think of it like, what are one or two things I could start doing today that really add a lot to my life it doesn't take up too much time or energy? That's what I want you to do today. Okay, so let's break down two more. One is that there are digestive changes, and we hit on this in the beginning in that study I shared, where we now know that in our 40s, we start to change how we metabolize lipids, and then as we go into our late 50s and 60s, we change how we metabolize carbohydrates. And so what that means is that we need to be paying attention and learning about how to fuel our body with anti-inflammatory fats, anti-inflammatory lipids in our 40s. And then as we go into our 50s and 60s, how the volume and kinds of carbohydrates that we consume become increasingly important. Now, for me in my 40s, what this looks like for me is really taking a shift away from some of those animal-based fats into anti-inflammatory fats like avocado, salmon, olive oil, avocado oil. These are the fats that not only nourish my brain, like we had talked about earlier, but they also help preserve some of my metabolic function. They're anti-inflammatory, they help keep my brain active, and my gut is going to respond better to these types of dietary fats. Now, as you move into your 50s and 60s and the shifts in carbohydrate metabolism start to present, now we have to look at the quantity and quality of carbohydrate. So often I work with women specifically who are starting to go through menopause, and they'll say things like, Jess, I'm not eating any differently than I have in the past, but my body is responding different. And they're not wrong. What's happening is that there is an increase in insulin sensitivity. So insulin is our hormone that moves glucose or blood sugar into our cell for energy. And as we get older, we have a harder time not only breaking down carbohydrates into that glucose molecule, but also getting our insulin to attach to that glucose molecule and move it into our cell. So we have to be really aware of where we can get really awesome carbohydrates. It's not that we don't need any, it's just that we need ones that have more nutrition in them. So here's how I settle this in the empowered eating model, because if I were to talk to my 50-year-old self and start to take in this information and say okay, so does this mean I can't have donuts? No, absolutely not. You can still have things like that. However, the quantity at which you consume them may need to be reevaluated compared to when you were in your 30s and 40s, because your body just doesn't handle it the same. This is going to be the same for alcohol and caffeine. Things change, and if we continue to consume those things at the same pace we did when we were younger, our biofeedback's going to tell us that it doesn't feel good. So how I reconcile it is, again, we never say no, we can't have things, but if we can stay curious, if we can act our shoe size, not our age, and listen to and learn how our body's responding, we'll be able to better adjust to these adaptations that happen as we age, and we won't feel like we're going into this restricted victim mindset, and instead we can keep it empowered. Okay, let's dive into one more age-related change and how we can age enhance it with nutrition. We tend to, with the gut changes, also comes a decrease in our immune system. So as we get older, we become more vulnerable to illnesses. And the era I'm in right now, I swear this is because of a combination of my lack of sleep and the age the kids are. They come home with everything, and I'm always catching something. So whether it's what kind of children you're around, or if it's lack of sleep, if it's all of the above, what we do know is that there tends to be this trend that as we get older, we become more susceptible to illness. And so one of the best things we can do is get our gut health in order. And how we get our gut health in order is we pay attention to what I call the poop report. Now, if you haven't heard me talk about the poop report before, let me back up for a second and tell you where this came from. When my mom was a nurse and myself and my 3 siblings would go to our babysitter, every time she would pick us up, she would ask the babysitter, what's the poop report? And what she was looking for was she wanted to know who pooped, how many of us pooped, was it healthy, and does she need to be looking out for it to happen later on during the day? Because what this told her is it told her how our bodies were operating, whether we had eaten enough, whether we had eaten enough fiber, were we getting enough nutrition. It told her a lot of information. And it's so funny. We would be so embarrassed when she would ask this. But here I am, 40 years later, I'm a dietitian, and I ask all of my clients, what is the poop report? What is happening when you go to the bathroom? This is such vital information. And the thing about your bowel movements is they are highly susceptible to change. So the goal isn't to have it to be perfect all the time. I have a lot of clients that get stressed when their bowel movements are off. Sister, that happens. We all go through seasons. I'm going through a season right now. I'll tell y'all my poop report. I'm off, and I'm learning how to fix it. The key to being an empowered eater here is learning to pay attention and adjust accordingly. So as we age, paying attention to what's happening on our poop report and modifying. Maybe we need more fiber if we're struggling with constipation. Maybe we need more fluid. Maybe we've upped our protein and we forgot to up our fiber, so things are not moving through as smoothly. Maybe we have too much fiber and things are passing too quickly. Maybe we have a stomach bug and we need to add in some pre and probiotics. There are a lot of avenues we can go down to heal the gut. And truthfully, sometimes our gut goes through so much trauma that we do need extra tools on hand. I love running food sensitivity tests because it gives us such a beautiful picture of what's happening within the microbiome. And we can work to modify the diet and give targeted supplements based on what those test results say. So sometimes we have to dive in a little bit deeper. But at the end of the day, this is such an easily accessible biofeedback tool that you can tune into to at least start asking questions, start getting people in your corner and talking about some of these topics to take better care of your health. Okay, man, we covered a lot. Are you still with me? I could seriously go on and on about this because it's mind-blowing to me how powerful nutrition is. And I nerd out about it because you make all these little changes. Like they literally did a study on this and found that people who make changes that reflect some of the stuff I've talked about, so like let's say they increase their legumes, which is high in fiber. They up their whole grains, nuts. They eat less red meat, less processed meat. They down some of the sugar-sweetened beverages. When people do things like this, their life expectancy changes and they can expect to gain about 6 to 8 years on their life, 6 to 8 years. And when I think of some of the rhythms I have when I eat these kinds of foods, I know I'm in a healthy spot. And so, Lord willing, nothing crazy or catastrophic happens. I think of keeping some of these healthy rhythms, and I know that my quality of life will be awesome as I age. And so I will be in this age-enhancing era in the decades to come. And I'm so looking forward to that. You guys know I love me some Jesus. And in the Bible, in Proverbs 3:16, it tells us that with wisdom, long life is in her right hand. And so I do know that when we take some of these pieces of nutrition science, we combine it with biofeedback and we listen to what our body says about it, there is a promise that we will have a long life ahead of us and a high quality one. And so my hope today is that you got a few things that you can take away and start to implement in your life. Remember, we are not here to do it all, but we are here to do some and keep it empowered. So what are the few things you can do? You know, I'm just thinking of my grandpa. He didn't want to give up his beer, but he did start exercising and he did stop smoking. And those changed the trajectory of his life. So we don't need to do it all, but what are a few things you can take away and do today to enhance you as you age? Because my goal here is that if you do a few of these, what younger women, what younger humans are looking up to you and saying, yep, I want to be like her. I want to be like him. I want to do these things because that looks fun. And guess what? I know each and every one of you listening can fill that role because I've seen it. I've seen it in the clients I work with. I see it in people who inspire me. And I know just because you're here, you will be one of them too. That is a wrap for today, sweet friends. I hope you have an amazing, amazing day. Until next time, cheers and happy eating. I'm so glad you were here today. Let's do yourself a favor and write down at least one actionable item that you can take away from today's episode to start fueling your awesome. Here on the show, we scratch the surface of empowered eating, but if you're looking to dive in deeper, I would love to help you out with that. Head over to jessbrownrd.com. You can check out my free Empowered Eating workshop. You can take a free quiz to see if your eating style aligns with your values, or better yet, book a discovery call with me to learn more about how to further your empowered eating journey. I cannot wait to be in your ear again, cheering you on along the way. Until then, cheers and happy eating.